When we arrived here, this was a bit of a mess really. Weeds everywhere and had been neglected. So we had a blank canvas. So we basically, with the customer and myself, it was a start from scratch. The client asked me to create two rooms really, to have this side of the garden as more of a formal area that was an extension of her lounge and dining room, and something that she could look out on and appreciate from inside the house, as well as the main sitting area really, and then the other side of the garden to be a bit more informal, and basically just to make the most of what was there already, which was a patio area, and then have a new lawn. What we've done here, we've used Welsh slate, which we do use quite a bit of. Works very well with water. It's very hard. It cuts nicely, and it forms a clean, contemporary look while being a natural stone, which is kind of our trademark really. So that was the sort of the core thing, and where we've used the Welsh slate is partly in the water feature itself, but also to clad two very ugly brick planters that were the centrepiece, the dividing part of the garden in the first place, and we've made those now into attractive features and seats and raised beds that were actually horrible before. Space is always a challenge in a small garden. Part of it is actually illusion, in that we need to make what space we've got feel as big as we've got. One of the tricks in this job is the curved brick lines through the paving, which actually draws your eye to the corners of the garden rather than the short width of the garden. But on an actual real level, I wanted to go as far as possible to the edges while still maintaining planting space. Fixed seating always gives you more space because you're not having to allow for loose chairs on one side, so you could put a table very close up to a fixed seat. So I think it's a combination of two things. It's making you feel like you're in a big space, and actually making as much practically of the space you've got at the same time. The planting, it's a combination of me and the client, and the client had some ideas. She had some plants that she was very interested in. She had some plant knowledge, and I guided her on quite a narrow colour scheme. So we've gone for very cool colours. It's all purples and whites and blues, but it's also blocks. So we've got grasses together, we've got the ground cover heuchera together, and it's easy for her to look after. The whole emphasis of this garden is that this is a lady who wants to stay here for a long time. She's going to get old in this garden, and she wants to be able to look after it easily for as long as she possibly can. So colour was important, interest through the year was important, but particularly easy, low maintenance is important as well. The four large Corten planters we've got in the informal side of the garden are the biggest important plants in a sense. We've got a combination of two acers, one of which is a purple one of which is a green one, but the green one, as it loses its leaves, is actually a snakebark maple, so that's going to be a winter interest. We've got a magnolia in the third pot, which is a spring flowering plant, and then we've got a particular favourite of the client. We've got the little cloud tree in the fourth pot, which will give her interest through the year, and it's something that she particularly asked for.
I decided to do up my garden because I had reached a point where I moved in a couple of years ago, and actually looking around me, it wasn't the sort of garden I wanted, and it was also very ramshackle. It was just a huge amount of material, first of all, that had to go, and then I had to think, what next? So doing it up my garden was a no-brainer. My brief to George to start with was to create me a garden that was divided into two. As you can see, it's two parts, and had two aspects of functionality. So one aspect was very much about dining. I love cooking and entertaining, so people could spill out onto the patio and sit on the slate seats and enjoy the environment they're sitting in, and especially enjoy the water feature. Whereas here, in this part of the garden, this is a sort of bungalow, so that actually I wanted to make sure that this is more of a private area I could enjoy from spilling out from the bedroom areas of the house. So that was quite important. What impressed me most was from the start, when I first met George, we took time to listen to what I actually wanted. We discussed the potential budget and what he could give and what he could do, and that was really good. And then he went away and drafted up some ideas and came back, and there was a negotiation. It wasn't imposed, there was a collaboration. And I think this collaborative idea of getting something you actually want, and then before you actually get to the point of commissioning, if you like, you actually have a plan and you know exactly pretty well what you're going to get. I've got lots of favourite parts, and some of the things that I've sort of specially requested, because I'm not a gardener, but there's some things I like to do. I like tinkering in gardens, and I'm not a sort of major gardener. The cloud tree, I love that because I love topiary. In my previous house I created my own topiary, and I just love the care you can take in actually shaping animals and making them, and over the long term getting them right. And I saw a cloud tree for sale and I fell in love with the cloud tree. And then I looked at the apple tree. I wanted an apple tree, and I thought, can I fit an apple tree? And George said there wouldn't be any apples yet. And when I came home, I had an apple tree and apples. And I love actually having apples because I can cook with them. So I can have apples next year and the year after and the year after that. So the big plants are things that I can identify with and actually sort of enjoy. So I love all these big plants, but actually really enjoy the grasses as well, because you get a lot of movement in the garden, so the grasses all sway, and that's really lovely. So it's very tactile in a way. I know tactile is about touching, but it's also, I can also hear the garden. So it's all those elements to it that are really quite important. So but I enjoy everything basically. I love everything in this garden. Without a shadow of a doubt, I'd recommend to my family and friends, and I already have actually. People come round. So I'm hoping I'm going to be a good ambassador for green art. I'd like people to come round because they can see what they're getting, and it's it's a big undertaking to suddenly say I'm going to commission a whole garden, but I'm really pleased I've done it because it's been my project for the year, and people come round and they enjoy it, and I like people sharing my garden and enjoying it, so that's really important. So yes, of course I would recommend this to anybody.